Well, Donald Trump certainly grabbed everybody's attention last night at a speech in North Carolina when he paid a compliment to former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein and his leadership tactics. Listen.
Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, right? He was a bad guy, really bad guy. But you know what he did well? He killed terrorists. He did that so good. Today, Iraq is Harvard for terrorism. You want to be a terrorist, you go to Iraq.
Rob O'Neill is a former U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6 member and the man who killed terrorist number one Osama bin Laden. What did you think of that?
It's an interesting way to say it. It now is a breeding ground, Iraq and Syria, both just because of ISIS. It was more under control, if you will, although brutal, by the dictator Saddam Hussein. But that's more Saddam and then his Ba'athist party, which is both Iraq and Syria as well, if that makes any kind of sense at all. Saddam just oppressed the people over there, and the reason that it's such a bad place now is because they were used to a dictator, then we try to give them this freedom. They're not quite ready for it yet.
But Rob, when you hear that, it's almost, some people would look at it like saying, well, Osama bin Laden, whom you neutralized, Osama bin Laden, terrible, terrible guy, but boy, did he have organizational skills. He brought down the Twin Towers. Why not use a better example? Golda Meir, Winston Churchill, Yitzhak Rabin, who was in charge of raid on Entebbe. Why not use something like that?
It's just, I think right now, because that's just the hot burning item right there, where ISIS is and where they're being recruited and where the civil war is being fought. And you'll see that it's happened in all the countries that we hit, whether it was the invasion in 2003 or the premature withdrawal in Iraq, whether it's the civil war in Syria with Bashar al-Assad, who's also a dictator, whether the bombing but no troops on the ground in Libya with Gaddafi, who was also a dictator. The countries were semi-stable, very, very brutal, but once you leave, it just is complete chaos, because the people there have been used to being so oppressed that they're not ready to do anything, and then the bad guys can come in and just take advantage. And people that have even been there, like the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, they're all doing that sort of thing, and they're very volatile, dangerous.
Well, it's the old, the enemy you know is better than the one that you don't know. And when you remove somebody like that, for example, Mubarak of Egypt, or Saddam Hussein, sure, there is that vacuum, and the terrorists really do move in. But to compliment, I think that's what's at issue here and what's getting discussed. People look at that and they say, when Saddam Hussein was in charge, Iraq was listed as a state sponsor of terrorism and not something to be held up as an example.
It was, but an issue too is it was also considered sort of a blockade between the Shia and the Shia in Iran and the Sunnis in Saudi Arabia. I mean, even though they fought the 10-year war there between, and there was a couple feet changed in 10 years as Iraq was fighting Iran. A bunch of people died. There was still that, because there's a Shia-Sunni rift. Saddam being a minority in Iraq, a Sunni, he was in charge of it, and there was that thing there. It's not a stable region. Yes, they were sponsors of terror. Yes, they used chemical weapons on their own people when Saddam hit the Kurds, but it all comes back to the ideology which what they believe. It's Sunni, Shia, and the Kurds in the north.
Right, and again, nation building, which Donald Trump has says doesn't
work. I don't think it'll work. If it will work,
didn't work in Vietnam. No. We had to leave.
I agree.
Eventually, they came through to Capitol.
But you need the people that are locals to come through. We're going to need help with our friends in Jordan, especially Sunni led in some parts, Shia led in the other. But you got to be careful, because you've still got the Shia and Iran that they have. It's so complicated. There's so much going on.
I would say don't hold our breath, because the Arab nations have not come through on that level. Rob, thank you so much.
Absolutely, Liz, great
it's an honor to have you. Rob O'Neill, former SEAL Team 6 member, and Fox Business, by the way, will be covering FBI Director James Comey's testimony. That's going to be on Capitol Hill tomorrow. Of course, it regards the FBI's investigation of Hillary Clinton's email practices. The hearing is expected to start at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. Just one more, Rob. I'm sorry, as you're sitting here, I have to ask you. You served while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State.
That's true.
Those emails, everybody said, were problematic because they were put out, certainly not protected, in areas where there are bad actors. What do you think of that?
In some of my experiences, she does know a lot, and she was qualified to be the Secretary of State. But it was almost depressing yesterday to see someone, oh, thank goodness we're not illegal, we're just incompetent.
Rob, thank you. I think a lot of people might feel that way too.